Police say the shooter, 45-year-old Radcliffe Houghton, was issued a court order to turn in all the firearms he owned after a restraining order was issued against him. But just days after the shooting, officials say Houghton never turned in any guns. News 8's Pauline Lee looks closer into these court orders and how they are supposed to work.
Well, if someone is issued this type of court order, they are obligated to turn in all of their firearms to authorities as soon as possible. Otherwise, they could be facing penalties like jail time. However, there's no set timeline for turning in guns, and there's also other factors that makes it complicated for law enforcement to do their jobs. It was a court order that 45-year-old Radcliffe Houghton was supposed to follow.
The judge orders the injunction, and the respondent is told that he must turn over the firearms to the sheriff immediately.
Just 2 days before Houghton opened fire at a Milwaukee-area salon, killing his wife and 2 other women, he was issued a court order to hand over all of his firearms right away. Investigator John Siegel of the La Crosse Sheriff's Department says these court orders aren't issued often here in La Crosse. And while there's no official time limit for turning in guns, he says he's never had to wait longer than 24 hours.
It doesn't say within 3 days, within 6 days. It says it must be turned over to the sheriff, and we attempt to do that as soon as we can. Most people come right to the sheriff's department and make arrangements for us to come out and get the firearms, or to have a third person come and turn them in.
What makes this case more complicated was Houghton bought the gun he used just a day before his rampage from a private citizen. That means no background checks were required, and law enforcement would have had no record of him owning a gun.
Between guns that are stolen, guns that are taken, guns that can't be tracked, trying to keep guns out of criminals' hands is extremely difficult. I think it's something that we'll always work to do.
Brian Smith, owner of Smith's Guns in La Crosse, is a licensed dealer, and everyone he sells to has to pass a background check. While he's an advocate for private sellers, he says adding more laws or more background checks wouldn't necessarily keep guns from getting into the wrong hands.
The criminal is always going to get a tool to do evil. No matter whether it's a gun, a baseball bat, a sword, anything. They'll do it with their bare fists if they have to. A criminal's going to commit a crime, and you can pass all the laws you want, and unfortunately, it's never going to stem the tide of evil.
Now, a court order to turn in firearms typically happens in cases of domestic abuse, harassment, child abuse, and occasionally criminal cases. La Crosse County Sheriff's Department says these types of court orders are only issued maybe 4 or 5 times a year.
Thank you, Pauline. Depending on the circumstances, people can petition the court to get their firearms back. They, however, would have to go through a background check as part of the process.